everyone to open mic night number 49. Yes, Big 5-0 next month. We might have to have a cake. Now next month is our last open mic night for the year. So it will also be our Christmas party. And the theme is an orange Christmas. So you see this orange? This is Busybird orange. We want everyone to come in something orange in some way. So Busybird orange, so you could have wings if you wanted to. So get your creative juices flowing. So we'll have normal open mic night from 7 o'clock, but we'll also have food from 6 o'clock. So we will send out invitations, but that's what's happening. And we'll also be announcing our Creative Fellowship winner on that night.
And it's proper dinner food, not snack food.
Yeah, no, it'll probably be a proper dinner. We haven't decided what yet, but it was really hot one year. Was it last year? It was really hot.
The year before
Every
with the
year it's been really hot. We're melting.
when we had the spit roast.
Yeah. So has anyone not put their name on the list to read? I've got your name, Michelle. Are you reading that? Morty. Okay, so everyone can have 6 minutes tonight, I think. I don't know if Liliana's coming. Was that last month? She wasn't? Oh, anyway.
Didn't she just get married?
She's going to get married, but I don't know when. She may have. I don't know. Okay, so as you know, for those of you who have read before, Kev is recording everyone's readings. If you don't want to be on YouTube, please let him know so that he cuts you out. Okay, we will start with Richard. Richard has a poem. You know, there's another Richard. That's why I was looking for you. Come on. Yeah, come on. So Richard is reading a poem called Ode to an Apple Tree. Welcome, Richard.
Thanks, everyone. So, this is an ode, and I've been wanting to write an ode for some time, and not finding the right way into it, and then I started reading Pablo Neruda, and I thought, that's it. So, I have to thank Pablo Neruda tonight. Okay, this is called Ode to an Apple Tree. Many years you have slumbered in forgotten memories of green Hampshire hills and Blackmore orchards, archetype of crisp sweetness and blushing cheeks, guardians of trembling black ovules, soft maracas to be shaken free in any hospitable land. Pink and white flowered, secret treasure of honeybees, you have chosen our golden ideal, leaping 12,000 miles to a wild foreign land, concealing your mysteries until the right sky, the right earth, the right moisture, the right mother beckons, welcomes this new old child to her brown breast. Under her gaze, you open with some trepidation, anxious of a bluer sky, brimming with promise and vulnerability, prepared to submit to the rough curiosity, the delight of golden dancing children, calling out for their turn to nurture the new babe, impatient to taste her milky freshness, like the burrowing bees lost in the repetition of their desire. All the while, your green synapses learn new paths, deep in earth's school, under the caring touch of many moist mothers who honour you and promise their love in this life and the next.
I don't know what he's going to do. It says radio interview here, so I'll leave him to explain.
3 weeks ago I did an interview
with the IBC SBS in Sydney. And of course, when I speak, I got a little bit too far. And anyway, I finished up that the whole interview was 42 minutes. So they wanted to put it on, so they decided to have it one part on Sunday the 17th and the second half on Sunday the 23rd. And they also put it on the web, both the Italian and the English version, with a lot of photographs that they asked me to do, so they posted on the website, both interviews, both in Italian and in English. And then there's a couple of things that have been a secret all my life. Nothing bad, just one of my usual pranks that I did to my parents many, many months ago, but I never had the courage to tell them that it had been a joke. So the pastor went thinking it was the truth. I didn't even tell my brother, the priest, because he would have told me. And then so the first part is called A Life for Music, Poetry and Art, Part 1. And this, what the interview has done is rewritten it. So it says, Marcello D'Amico, last of 5 children, was born in Malfa, in the island of Salina in 1940. Lived in the island of Stromboli, in a small village of Ginostra with 65 inhabitants. In 1955, at only 14 years of age, embarks the ship Oceania to go to Australia, where 2 of his elder brothers and only sister live. He takes with him 7 pieces of luggage, his books, his guitar and mandolin, as well as other small musical instruments. His deep passion for literature and for music don't allow him to be separated from his valued possessions. And I still have them. That's a scary part. So let's listen to the first installment of his story. And he goes. My mother won't give me permission to come to Australia, and to vent my anger, I write in my diary my intention of committing suicide. This is true. The young Marcello writes in his diary that he wants to commit suicide if his parents don't give him permission to emigrate at only 14 years of age to catch up with his brothers in Australia. One day he runs away from home with some friends and returns late at night. His family is desperate, and having read the note written in the diary, think of the worst scenario. His mother is so upset that decides to give him his desired permission. At last Marcello can materialize his dream, and in 1955 embarks on the ship Oceania, sailing for Australia. During the voyage, Marcello, that speaks some English, does his best to be a translator for those in need. He knows a bit of English, thanks to his teachings of his brother, the priest Vince, that guides him in his studies and thanks him. And thanks to him, Marcello learns also French, Latin, and ancient Hebrew. My passion for painting goes back to when I was 5, 6 years old, and for music when I was 7. In Ginostra, there's no entertainment for the young people. His passion for music dates back to when he was 7, and he starts to learn to play the mandolin, and then he switches on to the guitar, and even in secret, to the church organ. On the ferry during his travels from one island to another, he draws portraits for the tourists, and I used to make a bit of money that way. I saw my father for the first time when I was 6, when I was beginning to doubt his existence. Going over his past, Marcello remembers to have lived the first years of his life with his mother, 3 brothers and a sister. In the period between 1940 and 1946, his father, Vincenzo Calogero, is also a prisoner of war, and his mother is to take care of the family. He sees his father for the first time when he was 6 years old, when I was beginning to doubt his existence. His joy is immense. For the first 3 months after his father's return, Marcello follows him like a shadow to help him find once again a normal life. My mother was very tough, and not without a good reason. Being forced to play the dual role of father and mother, Mamma Maria asks his children to help with the house chores. To wash the tiled floor was a daily routine, and it had to be done well. Even if one tile is not polished properly, then God would have to wash them all over again. Again, it's true. I'm very happy to have lived in that period. At the time in the Aeolian Islands, life could not be compared to today. The family was the centre of everything. Arrived from a tranquil place, the traffic noises of Melbourne not letting him sleep at night. But with the time Marcella was getting used to it. In St Kilda there are many persons from the Aeolian Island. Every weekend I would gather and it was like a continuation of life in Stromboli. In the 50s, life for the immigrants is tough because Italians are still considered enemies. And even at school, life is not easy. Marcella has to put up with the bullying of one of the two schoolboys. One day, fed up with having to put up with the situation, he punches a boy much taller and bigger than himself, but he was afraid of the inevitable worst. Instead, the punch had the opposite effect, and the two boys became not only friends, but the bigger boy who was punched became Marcella's bodyguard, and I'm still friends with Owen Daly. Part of this will be repeated, I'm not quite sure where now, today, in John Fine's morning breakfast. Because John Fine's wife has been 3 times in Genostra. So I'll let you know when it is. Thank you very much. But it's the next time we have the second.
Liesl. Liesl has some kids fiction. Yeah.
A children's book that I've written and need to do something with. This is about Kay, who is number 4 of 6 kids, and she grows up in a very, very busy family. The setup for the book is that she's getting ready for the family beach day. Okay. She ran back to the bathroom door and banged on it. "Joy, hurry up!" A throat cleared behind her and she turned to see Joy poking her head out of the bedroom door. Joy granted Kay a curl of the lip and slammed the door. Loud music soon followed. Kay turned back to the bathroom. Who was in there? She banged again. "Hey, hurry up! I have to go!" "Okay, see you later then." A deep chuckle followed the terrible joke and Kay groaned. It was her dad, her stink out the bathroom dad. She did a quick calculation in her head. To allow for finished business and at least 10 minutes with the fan on high and the air freshener settling in, she was still 12 minutes away from being able to use the toilet. She locked her knees together and hobbled down the hall. She knew what she had to do. Kay reached the end of the hall and peered out. She could see her mother's back over the top of the kitchen bench, deliberately turned away from Tom and Trent, who wrestled on the floor in the family room. They were building Lego, and both of them wanted the long blue piece. Kay squeezed her legs tight and waited. There was no way she'd make it past her mother without being questioned, but it wouldn't take long for either Tom or Trent to distract her either, ensuring Kay a clear path. It was happening. Tom yelled as Trent snatched the piece away. In a second, they had run past the kitchen and into the lounge room, where even louder yells erupted. Their mother sighed, put her coffee cup down, and trudged after them. This was Kay's moment. In a flash, she was out the sliding door, onto the deck, and then down the stairs and into the backyard. The grass was cold and wet on her feet as she picked her way through balls, frisbees, and skipping ropes. She made the final leap over an upturned bicycle, and then there it was, the boys' toilet. The boys' toilet wasn't really a toilet. In fact, it was a shrub. Kay had discovered it one summer afternoon, after a couple of hours of playing with her brothers in the backyard and drinking lots of cordial. Upon returning to the house, Kay had found the sliding door locked and a smirking Joy on the other side of it. Joy had thought it hilarious to lock them all outside for an hour, not for anything in particular as far as Kay could tell, just because she could. Kay's bladder was close to bursting when Tom and Trent, who had either not realised or didn't care that they'd been barred entry to the house, had told her to use their toilet shrub. The toilet shrub wasn't clean, but it was private. It grew thick and wide next to the garden shed, which none of them ever went near in case they were given an unexpected yard chore. Kay had parted the foliage to find a damp, cool clearing, which stank of you-know-what. She'd only ever used the toilet shrub for dire emergencies, and this was definitely one of those times. With a last peek at the deck to make sure no one had come outside, Kay picked a rusty spade out of a discarded gumboot and dug a small hole. She crouched and was rewarded with instant relief. All of her annoyances and troubles washed from her mind as she closed her eyes and emptied her bladder. This, she thought, this is what peace feels like. An idea popped into her brain. Kay thought that if she could clean out the boys' toilet and permanently get rid of the smell, this could be her new place. The only people in her family that knew of it were Tom and Trent, and Kay was pretty sure she could convince them that there was a different bush on the other side of the yard that they used. Yes, this would be her secret place. She imagined the mornings and afternoons that would be spent here and began to decorate the space in her mind. There'd be a shelf over there between those 2 branches for her books, The spare cushion from the lounge would go right where she was squatting. Those straw placemats that had lived in the bottom drawer for as long as she could remember would make an acceptable floor, and for a moment it felt like Kay was really there, in her secret cubby. Meow! Kay's eyes flew open and saw their two ginger cats, Hoofs and Horns, sitting in front of her and staring at her with large green eyes. Shoo, she hissed. Hoofs and Horns merely blinked and then each let out another enormous meow each. Kay tried to wave them away. There was nothing gentle about Hoofs and Horns, named by Kay's dad, who thought he was being funny. Hoofs was an obese kitty who sounded like a herd of cows whenever he trotted down the hallway, and Horns was his slender brother, whose ears curled into two horn-like shapes. They were always hungry and underfoot, and Kay loved them dearly, but right now they were about to give her away. Meow, meow, meow! Be quiet, she hissed, shooing them with her foot, which she quickly realised was very hard to do when you were crouched with your pyjamas around your ankles. Kay, is that you? Her mother's voice was nearby. Kay rushed to pull her pyjama pants up. Hoofs and Horns cried even louder and rubbed their faces on her legs, desperate for food. Kay tried to avoid what was in the hole she'd dug and tumbled out of the shrub against her mother's legs. Her mum had a basket of washing on her hip and a confused expression. What on earth are you doing in there? She demanded. Kay gave a sheepish smile, and the treacherous Hoofs and Horns darted out of the shrub and under the house. When Kay didn't answer, her mum's face turned suspicious, and she put the basket down. She parted the shrub and poked her head inside. Kay tried to look innocent and wondered if her mother could run as fast as her. Surely not. Her mum sprang back from the shrub as if stung. She glared at Kay. Is that what I think it is? Is what? Kay asked, playing it dumb. That puddle in there. If that's what I think it is. Kay recognised the warning tone in her mum's voice and instantly went into defence mode. Well, Dad was in the toilet, and you know he had 2 serves of curry last night. Besides, technically you should be yelling at Tom and Trent. They were the ones who gave me the idea. Kay's mum grabbed her by the arm and dragged her towards the deck. What am I going to do with you? A backyard isn't a place to do your business. And you know, Kay never found out what she was supposed to know. Mum had gone quiet and her hands were now clutched protectively around Kay's shoulders. Kay looked up and realised what had made her mum stop. Squinty-eyed Toe was on the deck, and he looked mad.
Pamela is going to give us another instalment of her memoir. And we are now in Donnell, is that right?
Lunel,
Lunel in France.
south of France.
Oh,
If you remember last time I went back to England after 3 years in Spain, and I found another contract just with 4 girls to go to the south of France because there'd been a postal strike in England, no work, so I accepted it. So it was just 4 of us, and we're in the show, and I'll take it away from it. And there was different artists coming every month, and this particular month this lady came. The following month, Estelle Caress starred in the show. Sexy and sensual, she was different. And we soon realised by the false boobs, tiny body, outlandish makeup, the swagger and deep voice, she was a transvestite. Yet the audience adored her. One evening she was admiring our costumes and came up to us inquiring who made them. In pidgin English I explained I was helping the choreographer with the sewing. I want kind of a costume, pants and top, with many frills, she replied. This was a golden opportunity to make some money. Mais oui, je fais pour vous. Yes, I'll make it for you. 700 francs to do, she stated. Stunning. Trying to keep a straight face, I agreed. This was an enormous amount of money, 2 weeks' wages. I'd made many frills and pants at Joni's and knew I could do it, and had no intention of telling Léon. Léon's the choreographer. She bought a lovely deep blue material decorated with splashes of red, white, yellow and green. It was soft to the touch, the perfect fabric to make frills, and an excellent choice for a carnival costume. I arranged to take her measurements the following evening in our dressing room. Pamela, Val demanded with a wicked glint in her eye. Find out if she's got one. See how big it is or if it's cut off. Oh yes, Jerry giggled. Please try, Vicky implored me. Looking at the 3 of them, I tried to be stern, but they were only inquisitive. Oh, stop it, you lot. I can't guarantee an answer. I'll do my best but if one of you starts giggling or does something stupid, They understood. Time to measure Estelle. I placed her in a position so that the girls could see her through the mirror. 3 pairs of wide eyes washed as I measured her bust, arms, waist, and outside leg. The crucial moment had arrived. Her legs were slightly apart as I took the tape to measure her inside leg. Up and up it went. But as I reached the vital part, my hands shook. I couldn't do it. I had the necessary measurement, and Estelle was none the wiser. What did you find out? Val shrieked. Don't know. She must have it tucked away. The girls were appeased, and it wasn't mentioned again. When I gave her the costume, she tried it on and came to the dressing room. Magnifique, she declared, twirling round to let us see how lovely the frills were. The girls admired it, and I was proud of my work. J'aime beaucoup le cancan. Est-ce que possible autre costume? She inquired. I couldn't believe my luck. Oui, oui, I replied too hastily. She wanted a black velvet circular skirt with strass, that's a line of small cut glass stones on the edge, to open in the middle, with white lace frills on the inside. This was difficult, but the money was so good I welcomed the challenge. I had to tell Len, as I didn't know where to get the straws from. He was surprised. What are you going to do with 700 francs? I hadn't thought of anything. Why don't you buy a mobilette like mine? This was a great idea. Are you sure you can manage to make the skirt? Yes, Len. It was reassuring to know you would help, but I wanted to do this on my own, even if I sewed day and night. A mobilette is a French version of a small moped using petrol and can travel up to 50 kilometers an hour. With no time to lose, I bought a white one the next day, complete with 2 side bags. It was thrilling to get my freedom back, to go where and when I wanted, at a faster pace. Making the costume was difficult, and I agonised and struggled with it. The white petticoat and black skirt didn't present a problem, but sewing them together at the waist and hemline took hours, as did the strass, which I hadn't worked before. I earned every cent. Presenting it to Estelle, she was happy, although I could see the odd small mistake, but she promptly handed me another 700 francs and left the show the following week. What a pity. Why didn't you buy a good sewing machine? Lane inquired. So I did, and returned his old one to him. There was only one thing lacking in this idyllic life. Dawn, that's the cat, was the centre of attention of the girls leaving with a yearning to have a dog. The problem would be what to do with the dog when the contract ended. Ignoring my better judgment, I hopped onto the mobilette and raced to a pet shop in Leeds. Walking along the cages, the puppies were different breeds and colours, lying on their tummies oblivious to the world and sleeping. But one with patches of brown on its ears and body immediately caught my attention. It ran up to the cage to greet me, its tail wagging non-stop, pestering me to look at him, and as I stared at his big brown eyes, I knew he was the one. What breed is he? I asked. He's a French brat, but he'll grow too big for you. Oh, but he's so small. Look at his paws. You can see they're big, larger than the other puppies. I couldn't tell the difference, and was really in love with the adorable pup. Placing him in the side bag where I'd put a small towel to make him comfortable, and his special puppy food in the other, I whizzed back to Lunel. The journey didn't seem to bother him, but the girls were taken aback at this new arrival to the household, and Dormant was now reluctant to come inside. He had to have a name. Yes, he was growing to go up to be strong and healthy, and the name needed to reflect this. General Montgomery was a war hero. Perfect. And Monty became my constant companion.
I can just see you running around in your little moped.
I did.
It's cute.
I didn't run on it.
No, running around, driving. Shell. Where did Shell go?
This one's down there.
Oh. I'll skip your Shell and come back.
Well, someone just came on to talk about Sarah Lamberg's film.
Yeah.
Oh,
Do you want to do that now?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, come on.
Straight
Hi guys, I'm in a slight state of post-production disorientation. I've just come from Castlemaine today. Thanks for having me in. I've been working actually in Eltham in the company up at Nillumbik Health actually for the last 5 years, so it's just, I didn't know you guys were here, so
Do
it's
now.
a little jam, yeah. Hi everyone. So my name's David Farrington. I'm an actor and producer. I have been working with an amazing woman called Sarah Lamberg, who's Finnish Australian. She's recently completed a Finnish Australian co-production feature film, which was shot predominantly in the Eltham area and also in Helsinki over the last 2 years, which she fundraised and developed a creative team and produced and directed and wrote it, also performed it. Quite an extraordinary lady. I understand that I've worked with several parts of the film production and also performing the film there. What was the relationship to you? I'm not sure of it myself.
She's just been here a few times to open mic night.
Just to talk up the mic and perform stuff, yeah. So she wanted me to say thank you for the support that you've given her in the film over the last year. She's actually just been to the Gold Coast and also she's been at the Palme d'Or Film Festival in France. She got back yesterday from France where the film's just been screened, which is a very pretty amazing French film festival, everyone knows film. So I'm just here to sort of tell people that the film's finished. It's a magnificent piece of cinema. Its genre is a psychological thriller dark comedy. We shot it probably about 10 or 12 different locations in sort of Eltham, Montmorency and Greensboro area. Involved about 200 people, 2 countries and a huge amount of energy. The feature originally debuted at the Lawn Film Festival and then made in Melbourne Film Festival. Sarah then took it over to the American film market where she was very successful in acquiring a film distributor by the name of Laneway Entertainment in Los Angeles, which is for anyone who is in film or understands cinema, is a 1 in a trillion kind of odds ratio. So it's just remarkable to see her leadership as a woman in cinema at the moment. The gender gap in cinema is very large. Anyone in film may have heard of Gender Matters in Screen Australia. They've recently released a lot of money to close the gender inequality gap for women in leadership roles in cinema, such as directors and producers. Sarah's pretty much kind of truly in the avant-garde in my opinion that way. I used to work in London and Edinburgh and I've been in Australia for several years now. I think her work's quite extraordinary. So a remarkable local artist and pioneer in film. The film then went to the Cannes film market where it acquired a lot of interest as well and has now just been screened in the Palme d'Or Film Festival, which is one of France's prestigious film festivals in the south of France, in Nice. And we now have got it distributed in Australia through Umbrella Entertainment, so it's about to be screened at the Nova Cinema this Friday.
Cool.
So come along if you like. I'm not into hype. I'm more an actor-writer myself rather than a producer, but I do produce. I produce at the theatre more than film, but I'm working on a web series project myself at the moment. But it's almost sold out, I believe, at the Nova at the moment, but it has a full run for a week. So if you want to come to the red carpet and do the schmoozy stuff, there'll be live performances, there'll be Q&A with the cast and crew, particularly the cast, and the director and writer, of course. There'll also be some live performance. Live drawing features very heavily in the film, and we shot quite a few scenes in live drawing in Eltham and also in Castlemaine, actually, in several art galleries. So it's a really beautiful piece of cinema. I can give you a little bit.
Did you say this Friday?
This Friday, yes, at Nova. I'll just leave some flyers around there and some info for you. And if I can find my mobile phone, I can give you the taste of the. I'm one of those people. People often ask, "What's the film about?" And it's never an easy question to answer because it's an art house film, and it's a collision between everything. The writer is herself a collision between European and particularly Nordic, and specifically Finnish values, and Melbourne, and that's what this film really looks like. But the official critique of it, which has just been released, is into our official media release. Sarah Lamberg's twisted drama hit Cinema Nova in October 20th, 2017. Already being compared to the dark masterworks of David Lynch and Roman Polanski, Innuendo, the bold feature debut from Finnish-born Australian-based writer-director-star Sarah Lamberg, is unlike anything else you've ever seen produced in Australia. Part psychological thriller, part dark comedy. The innuendo follows a repressed, psychologically fractured Tuli Lamberg from Finland to Australia, where she daringly throws herself into the world of life modelling. Moving out of the shadows cast by her complex relationship with her angelic twin sister, Tully is soon torn between two very different men. The sensitive Thomas, played by actor Annie Hazel, and the charismatic chainsaw sculptor Ben, played by Australian actor Brendan Bacon. And she begins a startling journey of self-discovery. Highly original, enigmatic, erotic, and ultimately deeply moving, innuendo marks the emergence of a startling new cinematic talent. Sarah's ethos as a filmmaker is pretty much this. My aim as a filmmaker is to make work that moves the audience, whether it's with love or hate or disgust or admiration. I don't mind if watching a film leaves the audience cold or if they think my work was really nice. I failed. Having a bath is nice. Eating a good dinner is nice. Scratching an itchy spot is nice. If experiencing my work sparks up emotions, conversations or internal thought processes, then it's worth the ticket price you've paid. So, join us if you like for the journey. There's a wonderful party on after the event. That's actually out of the Eagle's Nest Theatre, which is a warehouse in Brunswick at 24 Hardy Street. There'll be about 100 people there from the cinema, film related industries, and a lot of general artists from sort of North Melbourne as well. And there'll be lots of drinkies and good ticket price for the premiere as part of the entry for the actual after parties. So thank you very much for the time and letting me squeeze this so impromptu.
So you got some flyers.
We've got some flyers there and just a few pin-ups as well. Which
Cool. Maybe you can put them on the table.
we shot quite a lot in Castlemaine as well, so we're doing a lot of work up there at the moment with the film, and hoping to spread it at regional cinemas too, which are part of the sort of renaissance that's happening in the region of Victoria at the moment. But, so thank you very much, guys, and you have a beautiful space here tonight. I'm sorry I discovered you so late.
I'm Shell. My thing is true stories. Have I got chocolate on my face?
No.
Really nervous tonight, so I'm just going to do my best and hope to get through it. Still reading from Tim Dunlop's autobiography, a story I've called 27 Hours. I had spent the year working my tail off and decided it was time to turn the attention to myself. Friends Stu and Claire from Perth were heading off to Thailand to the island of Koh Samui and invited me to tag along. I loved the heat, so the second I arrived, I ventured outside for my first breath of heated smog. My flight to Koh Samui, I hope I said that right, was just a day away, so I was on a mission to take in as much of Bangkok as I could. I had 27 hours and an agenda. First, I needed a clean t-shirt. Then, I wanted to see an authentic Thai martial art fight. Then, Thailand's speciality, a ping pong show. I lit up a rollie and made a beeline for the taxi rank and jumped into the back of a tuk-tuk. I was hoping Thailand was like Bali, where you could befriend a driver for the entire time to look after you. So in the back of the tuk-tuk, I shared my itinerary with the driver and off we went. Just 3 kilometres down the road, we pulled up to a jeweller. I was a bit surprised because I never asked to stop. Inside, you go, he said. I walked inside only to find no one else in the shop and 3 smiling faces staring back at me. Want opals? Want gems? Not really, I answered politely. I dawdled, staring aimlessly into display cases full of jewellery. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the owner of the store pass a note to my driver. I exited the store within the minute and got back on the tuk-tuk. What did you get from the store owner? I asked. Reluctantly, he pulled out the slip from his pocket. It was a petrol voucher for 20 baht. Time was wasting. I now had 25 hours to go. I don't want jewellery or suits or anything. I will give you 100 baht for fuel if you take me where I want to go. He nodded and off we went. Our next stop looked like a jungly park, but I soon figured out it was a reptile zoo. While peering in at the tiger snake enclosure, I noticed the cage door was open. Then I realised there were no park rangers or even employees. The place was abandoned. Over my shoulder I saw one of the cages with a sheet of perspex across the wire front. An ointment of some sort was dripping from it. I shielded my eyes from the sun and leaned over to get a closer look. Just on the other side of the perspex was a reared up snake ready to strike. Suddenly a burst of liquid came from the snake directed at my face. I jumped back. I wiped the sign clean and read, "Spitting cobra." "Jesus Christ!" I yelled. "That thing tried to blind me!" Frightened and a little angry, I headed straight for the exit, hoping that I didn't run into another scaly escapade. "No more wildlife, okay?" I told the driver. I wasn't getting anywhere with this guy. I was now down to 23 hours and hadn't seen anything on my agenda, so I ditched him and headed off on foot. I walked for over 2 hours and had no idea where I was. On impulse, I took a left and found myself walking down a laneway covered in graffiti. A man with a cloth on his head looked up as I passed. He had a very visible blood clot eye and scabby hands. We both seemed shocked to see each other. Just past him were two more people, a male and a female. The female had horrific sores on her left hand, and the male had some sort of facial disfigurement. They had a bowl in front of them and gestured for me to put something in it. I couldn't help but wonder why they weren't on the main street. Surely that was a better vantage point to beg from. I glanced back for a fleeting second and realised that every one of the beggars had stood up and were now following me. Then I realised they were not just beggars, they were lepers, and from what I knew, leprosy was contagious. My mind raced with images of zombies from horror movies, only this wasn't a movie. I picked up my pace and kept walking, but 200 metres from where I entered, I found myself at a dead end. Then came my light bulb moment. This is why they're down a laneway. The laneway I was now walking down with nowhere to go. I realised I was trapped. To be continued.
Memoir. And it is called Growing Up.
Hard act to follow, that one. We're from St Anthony's, said the two women who knocked at my door at 10 a.m. one morning. Yes? They stared at me. I stared back. Father Ma sent us. My husband had become upset by the ongoing state of disarray of the house and had gone to the parish church to ask for help from the women there to get it back into order. As was his way, he'd forgotten to mention it to me. "I wasn't told you were coming." I glanced behind me. "I don't need help," I said, half closing the door so they couldn't glimpse the chaos. And one of the women looked anxious. "You sure? We're here now, so I'm fine," I said. I closed the door on their devastated faces. I had ruined their day, ruined their chance of performing a Christian service. I watched them through the curtains, drifting slowly, angrily down the drive. I looked around and wondered just for a second if I should call them back. Every bit of floor was covered with something. The saucepans in their lids would have been hard to explain. The children loved playing in the saucepan cupboard, and by the time I put them all away, they were all back again. There were plastic bowls. My daughter liked to wear them on her head. Toys bought by my mother, cloth books, cardboard books, a couple of spoons, a baby walker and a ride-on elephant. Clothes of various shapes and sizes, a blanket from the cot and 2 pillows. I noticed a tea towel and a face washer and wondered how they'd worked their way to the lounge. Last night's dishes were in the sink, saucepans on the stove and bowls from the children's breakfast on the bench. In the middle of it all were 2 children, wheat bits still plastered to their faces. The baby was in his high chair, continually throwing a wooden spoon and soft toys onto the floor so that I would have to pick them up. It was all pretty basic stuff, nothing dangerous or toxic. Ordinary household goods spread around rather than, as was tribally expected, stowed away out of sight. But I couldn't let strangers see how I lived, what a hopeless disaster I was. I could just imagine them talking about me afterwards, those perfectly attired, perfectly organised women. There never seemed to be time for tidying the house, even if I felt inclined. By the time I dressed the children and fed them, washed the nappies and everyone's clothes, took them for a walk in the pram, fed them again, changed their nappies and put them to bed, ironed my husband's endless business shirts, got the children up, prepared dinner, fed them, bathed them and put them to bed again, there wasn't time for much else. Still, if it worried my husband, it must have been bad. He was a study in messiness himself. The rhythm method, system of birth control acceptable to the men of the Catholic Church, worked for a couple of years until my daughter got sick of waiting. She provided me with 8 months of non-stop morning sickness, a message that enough was enough. The time had come for me to take control of my life. I mapped out a routine and tried to keep to it. I could manage 2 days, but on the third, my brain felt as if it was exploding. The boredom was excruciating. I took to reading book after book, even propping them up at the kitchen bench as I mashed the potatoes. I knitted jumper after jumper for the children, something that seemed a bit creative and useful. I bought home decorating magazines and painted walls and skirting boards and ceilings. But what I craved most of all, though, was adult company. Even Tupperware parties were exciting. But young children grow, and mine did, and eventually I was able to hire an occasional babysitter and return to the adult world. I never became a housewife. The house by other standards was messy, but the children arrived at adulthood healthy and reasonably well adjusted. My ex and I came out of it more or less in one piece, and surely that's all that matters. Was it so important the skirting boards be free of dust, that the dishes be done the same day they were used, or that I knew how to prepare the perfect quiche Lorraine? Interestingly, both my sons married women who would have palpitations if they discovered a speck on the carpet. There must be something in that.
Really, are you read it? Pen's not working. Okay, I'm going to read a bit of my memoir. We've got quite a bit of memoir and biography tonight. Some of you may have heard some of my memoir. I grew up on a commune on the southeast coast of New South Wales, and we didn't all live at the same building. We lived on a whole lot of different spots around 500 acres, but we had working parties to build each other's houses. This piece is called Wart for Sale. I'm going to read twice as long. Even though Alan has been here longer than us, he has only now picked a spot for his house. It's very close to the edge of the river. Too close, says Mama, and we agree. It's the closest house to us, and we can get there out along the saddle and then by following the river upstream. We leave our place, past the tall spotty gum tree behind the house, walk along the saddle single file and pass old mangy Wombat on the way. He's bumping into things in the daylight when he should be in his burrow sleeping. There are lots of wombat holes along this track, and I wonder if this is where Wind in the Willows comes from. Old mangy Wombat reminds me of the blind mole. The good thing about Alan's house spot is that it's flat and easy to get to from the road. Everyone agrees about this when the working party puts in the uprights for the roof. The road is awash with moonlight when we finish the day of work at Alan's house. The moon is so bright that we can walk along the road without a lantern. Richard ducks and weaves along the road, talking loudly about everything with his funny English accent. He tells us jokes and we fall along the road full of laughter and silliness. A lot of the time we can't understand what he says, but we laugh anyway. When we get home, we sit around the fire sharing stories. The moon follows us everywhere. I can't wear shoes because I have a giant wart on the end of my big toe. It doesn't matter though, because we don't wear shoes much. I can't stop rubbing it and playing with it. Want to sell me your wart? Asks Alan. His breath smells of beer and his eyes are always red and watery, like he's been standing in front of the fire too much and has smoke in his eyes. There are tiny red lines like rivers inside the whites of his eyes. When he gets too close, my skin feels all prickly and I check to see if I have ants running up and down my arms. His nose is red too, and I try to move away from him without him noticing. I can only do it by the full moon, he says, waving at the sky. I look up at the moon to see if it agrees with him, but it just glows silvery beams at me. I want him to stop talking to me, so I agree. He pays me 5 cents. I'm not sure what I'll do with 5 cents. It'll be a long time before we go to town again, but I put it in my pocket and think about how many mixed lollies I'll buy at the milk bar in Cabargo. Alan kisses the coin and rubs it over the wart and mumbles something. The wart on my big toe throbs under the light of the shimmering moon, and Alan looks happy with himself. The next morning the wart is gone. I pick at my toe and look all around me to see where it is. I ask Alan what he did with it. It's mine now and you can't have it back, he says. His eyes are squinty. I want him to prove that he has it. I can tell he knows where it is. It's mine, all right. It's somewhere on my body that I can't show you, he says, until his eyes get narrower and he squeezes his lips together while I think about it. The only place he can't show me is his dick, that doesn't make sense anyway, since everyone swims with nothing on around here. He pretends to look at some trees in the distance and rubs his belly like he is full from breakfast. I don't ask any more questions and run off to the river. So again, another piece of biography from Loretta.
Hopefully you can see me over the laptop, I'm not very tall. Okay. Has anyone heard of Alice Anderson? Anyone in this room? Okay, well you're about to learn about her. The biography I've almost finished is called A Spanner in the Works, the remarkable story of Alice Anderson and Australia's only all-girl garage. What I'm reading tonight is the prologue, and I'll just get through as much of it as I can. Melbourne, the 6th of August 1926. It is early evening and the ladies of the Lyceum Club are gathered for an extraordinary supper meeting in the members' lounge. The view from the 5th floor of the English, Scottish and Australian Bank building on the corner of Queen and Collins Street is an admirable one, especially at twilight when the sun shimmers on the Yarra across to Port Phillip Bay. However, at this moment, all eyes are focused on the motor car that is parked in the street below. Women's magazine, Woman's World. Dr. Janet Greig, the first woman anaesthetist in Victoria, and Georgina Sweet, preeminent zoologist, current club president, and Australia's first female acting professor in biology. Alice removes the leather jacket and bulky coat, revealing her petite figure. However, rather than frocks, shoes and stockings, she is dressed in a masculine-style shirt, tie and breeches. A few of the older ladies seated in a corner chortle as they recall the impression Alice made when she first presented as a new club member almost 8 years before. She strode into the dressing room looking like a boy in her breeches, leggings and tweed cap pulled down over her eyes. Some of the conservatives looked at her askance, but others were intrigued, says a large woman wearing a pale peach drop-waisted gown with matching shawl round her copious arms. Oh yes, a small-waisted woman dressed in a red satin coat dress continues, and someone laughing asked a newcomer for her qualifications. Oh, I got through as the pioneer of women in the motoring industry, she explained, Alice's face all wreathed in smiles. The ladies laugh and nod in recognition as they sip their tea and nibble on freshly made sandwiches. Meanwhile, Alice engages in the lively conversation with those gathered around her. Not all Lyceum Club members approve of Alice's dress code, but she is nevertheless a popular young woman, even though, unlike most other Lyceum Club members, Alice has never completed secondary school, let alone university. Her 2B membership, denoting women without academic qualifications who have otherwise rendered distinguished public service, is well deserved for Alice, is an exceptional young woman. Not only is she the first woman in Australia to own and operate a motor garage, hers is the only garage in the country to employ all women staff, be they chauffeuses, tour conductors, mechanics or driving instructors. Alice's Lyceum Club membership is also helped along by the fact that her Kew garage in Cotham Road is situated just a few miles from the Melbourne University campus. Many university women, including Florence Young and Marjorie Herring, who proposed and seconded Alice's club membership, are also Lyceum Club members who frequent the garage. They are single, waged, and among the first women able to afford the purchase and maintenance of cars in their own right. Marjorie's sister-in-law Nancy is even on Alice's payroll as a driver. The press affectionately call Alice and her employers the Garage Girls. Fitted out in masculine chauffeur uniforms or overalls, the public often mistake them for boys or men, and rumours of transgressions of all sorts are rife. But they wear the most practical clothing for the job, and thanks to Alice's excellent training and firm guidance are widely recognised for their professionalism. Alice also wears mannish clothes because it is her sartorial preference. She's only ever had a couple of frocks in her wardrobe for those special occasions when nothing else would do. Otherwise, she finds dresses a nuisance. However, according to Alice's younger sister Claire, who works at the garage on weekends, Alice always impresses upon her employers that it is not necessary to ape men or to lose their femininity. Have I got the minute or not? What does that mean?
I'll go again when
Good,
time's
thank
up.
you. Another who stands out from the fashionable crowd this evening is Miss Jessie Webb, founding member, recent president, and Melbourne University's first female lecturer in the history department. She looks far from elegant in her sensible frock, woolen hat and stout shoes. She's dressed not for this evening, but for the occasion to follow. Tonight, the ladies of the Lyceum Club are here to farewell Alice and Jessie, her driving companion, on their imminent departure to Central Australia. They will be taking the Little Austin 7 on a return trip of 3,000 miles where few roads exist. Much of the continent's interior is uninhabited except for vast sheep and cattle stations, wild animals and aborigines who have been the traditional custodians of the Never Never for at least 60,000 years. Thank you.
A couple of months ago, it couldn't make it last month, called Prince Who Would Not Grow. So for those who didn't hear the beginning, it's about a prince who's very, very short for his age. And one day he escapes the castle on the back of a messenger's horse. And what I'm up to now is that the prince has been brought back. The messenger discovered him on the horse, brought him back. He's being sent to his room by a disgusted mother, but the queen, discovered that he's grown a little since this adventure. The following day she sent for one of the king's councillors, admitting that something must be done. The councillor stroked his beard and spoke slowly, not wishing to appear too eager to dispense with the prince. He gravely advised the queen that her son should be sent to a faraway monastery
where he might be schooled in the kingly arts. In her heart, the Queen saw the wisdom of his counsel, but she could not bring herself to send her son so far away. During the night, she had searched her own soul and recognised how poorly she had prepared her son for life, but she was not yet ready to part with him so completely. However, something had to be done, so she sent for one of her own counsellors, who suggested that the Queen send the child to the village school, where he might come to know the needs of the people he would rule when he became king. Afraid that her son would learn to behave like a peasant, the Queen rejected this advice. Alone again, the Queen paced her rooms in despair. If the king should hear about the escapades of their son, he might well send him to the distant monastery. What should she do? At last, the Queen determined to disguise herself and go into the nearby village to seek the counsel of a wise woman she had heard lived there. And thus it was that, at dawn, the Queen swathed herself in the robes of a peasant woman and hastened from the castle. Shadows still stretched across the ground, and the night dew sparkled on the grass as she hurried through the village. Before long, she arrived at the dwelling of the wise woman and knocked at the door. "Who is there?" came a voice from within. "A mother seeking your advice in the matter of her son." "Come in, mother." The Queen entered the rough home, where she found the old woman sitting by the fire and darning stockings. "What troubles you, mother?" asked the wise woman, mending without pause. In the stillness, a log fell in the grate with a burst of orange flame and much crackling. The Queen hesitated and then let the hood fall away from her face. "The Prince is very unhappy and ill-mannered, but I am loath to send him far away as I have been advised." "The Prince is also very short," remarked the wise woman, who did not seem to be surprised by her majestic visitor. "You will find that one remedy will solve both problems." Her blue eyes studied the Queen's face. "You must send the child out into the world, for he is too fearful and at the same time angry that he is so. 3 tasks are his to undertake, and for the first 2 you may go with him, but the last he must face alone. Indeed, even for the first you must travel as his attendant. He must not know that it is you." As she heard these words, the Queen's heart leapt with joy. This was surely the answer. She thanked the wise woman and offered her payment, but this was refused. "You will pay me when he has grown 6 inches, the old woman said. "Measure him tonight." The Queen headed back to the castle, keeping her face well covered by her hood, for by now the village streets were busy. As she passed through the village, her eyes followed the children running and playing in the square. Great strapping children they appeared to be, and it suddenly struck her that her own son was decidedly small and exceedingly delicate. Watching their robust figures and hearing their shouting and laughing, the Queen felt a tumult of emotions in her heart. She hurried on home. That night she measured her young son, whose chin just cleared her knee. She told him that on each of the next 3 days he would be leaving the castle on a task of some sort. A new servant would be employed in order to accompany him. "No!" bellowed Edward, but his mother calmly dismissed him. The following day the young prince was woken early and dressed by the new attendant, a gentleman with soft white hands and a muttery voice. "Hurry along, Your Highness," he said, pushing the boy gently toward the castle gate. The first task. The young prince must sit outside the castle gate and make a record of those who enter, their name and business. And you, mother, in your attendant's garb, sit with your back against the wall and watch him with your eyes closed. Arriving at the castle gate, the prince and his attendants saw there a cluster of burly men whose voices boomed and rumbled. Edward cast his eyes downward, but the attendant pressed him forwards, presenting the gatekeeper with a letter signed by the Queen and stamped with the royal seal. The gatekeeper's gaze rested in surprise upon the very small prince. Acting on the orders inscribed in the letter, he gave the young prince a seat and a record book and a quill. The attendant found his own place on the ground with his back to the wall, where he waited, watching and listening. During that first day, Edward sat very quietly in his seat, observing the travellers pass between the great gates with keen interest, but ducking his head shyly when addressed by anyone. He wrote in his book in a sloppy hand, smudging the page badly, but seemed to enjoy the task, and his eyes were ever on the passers-by. Many were the people travelling in and out of the castle, merchants in fine clothes on great horses, farmers in rough raiment rattling by on laden carts, weary travellers in dusty boots and stained apparel. As the Queen watched her son, pleasure and guilt struggled for ascendance in her heart. For was he not growing, even as he sat there, his eyes and ears ravenous for the sights and sounds around him? Remembering the wise woman's words, she obediently closed her own eyes and leaned back into the wall. Voices ebbed and flowed around her. Some she recognised and others she did not. She rested against the sun-baked stones, the hard ground beneath her, and some measure of her care did melt away. In her mind's eye, she tended an image of her son in his new surrounds until it faded into a pleasant dream. At the end of the day, Edward marched back into the castle happily and had to be detained on some imaginary pretext, while his mother rapidly changed her clothes from those of his gentleman attendant into those of the Queen. His mother greeted him gladly, eager to hear about his experiences. The boy's smile and rosy cheeks told the story in full. Second half.
Thanks, Lillian. That's it for our readings tonight, unless I've missed anybody.
I'm trying to read.
So, does anyone have any events or anything, other events coming up that they want to share? Did you want to?
Yes, the Swiss Italian Festas on Dalesford from tomorrow until Sunday. So I'm running a workshop in dragonology, mainly for the kids for a gold coin donation from 12 to 3 on Saturday, and there'll be lots of opportunities, to go along and find out about, the wonderful heritage. The Swiss Italians that came out around 1850 onwards have given.
Where's your workshop located?
In theory, I'm launching that romance book at the end of November or early December.
I'm not sure when I can be back here, but
we also have our Karma King Lake writing retreat coming up, not this weekend but next. We have one spot left. So if anyone is interested, come and have a chat to me, because I need to finalise numbers this week. Anything else, Kev? Les, have I forgotten anything?
No.
Nope. So next month, last open mic night for the year, number 50. So we'll have to have a cake, I think. Our theme, because it's our Christmas party as well as our end of year party, is Busybird Orange. This orange, you have to come dressed with something with orange, or you can, you might be to think of something outside the square. It will be our Christmas party, so food will be from 6 o'clock and open mic night as normal from 7. We'll also be announcing our creative fellowship on that night.
What's the date?
The date is, I've written it down, 15th of November. So Wednesday the 15th of November. So third Wednesday, yep.
Do we bring food and money?
Food and money.
Always bring money.
Just $100 for you, Robin.
No worries.
So it'll be normal entry fee, the $5 entry fee, but we'll be supplying food. Yes.
That's naughty.
Okay, has everyone got their tickets?
Yep.
Raffle ticket today gets these 2 books. Healthy Mind and Healthy Body. Just in time for the new year, which is very fast approaching. A11. If anyone else doesn't have A11, then it can be yours.
It should be, because I'm A10 and you came in after.
Is it A12 is the next one?
Yeah, A12 is the next one, so...
Yep,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Serendipity is a funny thing. Oh, that's very, very generous of you. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
enjoy.
And my theory.
So, thank you all for
You're sitting
coming.
behind it.
Thank you all for coming. We have plenty of supper there, so hang around and have a chat, and hopefully we'll see you again next month. Thanks.